Hey, what's up? I'm Noah Michelson. This is Build, and I'm here with Tegan and Sara, who have a brand new memoir called High School. Welcome, you two. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very excited to be here.
Very exciting. You also have a new album coming out, and you're heading out on tour, so it's a big week for y'all.
We're overachievers.
You are.
This was our year off.
But it's like a gift to everyone. You're like, we're coming back. We're going to give you everything. When you're writing a memoir, how do you start? I mean, well, take me back before that even. Whose idea was it? Do you remember the moment when one of you looked at the other and said, we should write about everything that happened to us in high school, which sounds like a horrible idea, but, you know, how did that happen?
Honestly, we were looking at doing a podcast or a book. Like, we were sort of throwing around a lot of different ideas. And for us, when we're talking about creative projects, we can sense when other people are getting excited about an idea. And it was specifically when we were sitting with, a small team of people, and we were talking about ideas around writing essays or perhaps a kind of memoir. And it was specifically this idea of writing about 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, really giving ourselves that kind of boundary of high school, talking about our sexuality, talking about becoming creatives and songwriters, talking about that sort of like jumpstart into our future career, sort of an origin story of Tegan and Sara. And that was, I could sort of sense in the room that was an idea that got everyone really excited. Mm-hmm. And that was when we went to work on, well, Tegan worked on the proposal, which was kind of the crappy school part, and I started writing chapters.
I did have to do all the heavy lifting.
Right.
It's fine. I took a bigger piece of the advance.
She didn't.
It seems only fair.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You said you set up that boundary of high school, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. Were there other boundaries that you set up? I always wonder. I mean, did you say, we're not going to write about this, or this is off limits?
I think we didn't have any boundaries initially, but I think as we sort of dug into the writing, there was definitely things that both of us, I mean, part of it was just dictated by the fact that once we identified the themes we were going to focus on, which was, our relationship as siblings, our discovery of, music and our ability to write music and our career and our sexual identity, that those were sort of the major themes we were going to focus on. And so we tried not to veer too much off that. And, we're friends with most of the people we write about in the book. And so we also really wanted to be respectful of them, and that this was our story, to ensure we were always telling our story, not their story. And we did do a lot of explaining to the people in our life, about our intention and why we were doing this. There was a lot of, not apologizing, but definitely permission asking, I think some people in our lives were, why would you want to talk about drugs? Why would you want to talk about some of the harder things that happened in high school? But I don't think stories about women, especially young women, get taken seriously very often. I think young people are often patronized and sort of, especially women, oversimplified. And we were not simple people, not even when we were teenagers. And I think as queer women, even more than that, there just is such a lack of representation for our voices. And we just basically begged the people in our lives to give their blessing. So but that was the boundary, was respect those people still are in our lives. Don't kick the hornet's nest, if you will.
Right. I wondered about those conversations about how you approach someone and say, guess what? I'm writing a tell-all book and you're in it.
Tegan's nicer than me. I didn't really ask any permission. But I also think that because for me, I knew that there was no sort of like salacious gossip I felt I was revealing. Mm-hmm. A friend in our life said, the truth is that the people we're the hardest on in the book are ourselves. Right. And I think for me, it was about deconstructing that time in my life and looking at some of the tougher stuff that I felt and that I went through. And it wasn't about exposing the people that I loved and who loved me.
We tried to avoid that phrase, tell all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is not a tell all. And I also feel like a lot of those stories carry, like the stories we didn't tell, while they might be significant to us, I actually feel like what we left on the page would be significant to the reader, like to the people who know our band or who might be introduced to our band now because of the memoir. Mm. So, we have a lot of really good stories, but it just, in the grand scheme of of the book, it didn't feel like it was necessary that they be there.
Unless it's really popular, in which case there'll be a sequel with all the salacious tell-all stories.
Tawdry bits.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, once we're rich and famous as authors, we'll just like, all those people are dead to us. We'll just be like, tell everything.
But there are some parts that I think people might think are salacious. Like you said, you talk about drugs, but I really loved it. It was refreshing that you aren't talking about it in a sort of like keep kids off of drugs sort of way. I thought it was fairly positive. Talk to me about that experience of writing about drug use and not coming at it from a scary, this is what you shouldn't do kind of vantage point.
I just want to be very clear that in no way is the book a permission granting, like, go ahead and try drugs when you're 15 years old.
Right.
It is, I think especially in the queer community, it's important for us to talk about this linkage between shame, fear, trauma,
Self-medication.
and self-medication. Like in the queer community, statistically, we drink more, we smoke more, we do more drugs, we take more risks. And a lot of times we don't talk about what is the root of that? What is making us do these things? So there's a little bit of that. We wanted to have a platform to talk a little bit about some of our behavior as young people and the result of growing up in a society that was very homophobic and misogynist, and how we sort of, in some ways, numbed the experience of being queer in that time. But there's also a sort of sisterly story here around, while we were having some of our most difficult experiences with each other,
We had a lot of fun on
we had
acid.
fun and we did these, and in some ways, it brought us back to this childlike state and we were very experimental, and we were part of a culture that was that was experimenting with drugs. And Tegan's right, a lot of times guys, they take drugs and they go on these soul searching, whatever, I don't know, they're allowed to experiment, and the result of that is often sort of like, oh, it was really, mind-opening. Or I'm thinking of bands and authors and
Like
people
the Beatles,
the
people like that,
Beatles, I
yeah.
didn't want to say it. You said
Harry
it first.
Styles
Yeah.
looking
Harry's-
very fine on the cover
Yeah, he
of
looks
Rolling
Rolling
very,
Stone.
that makes me feel
But talking
straight
about
looking at
taking
Harry, but yeah.
mushrooms, and,
Right.
and no one would ever criticize. We only ever
No.
hear about women who take drugs if they overdosed or died or look terrible. And I
Yep.
think Sara and I wanted to reflect that while our time of experimentation is over, that it was a part of our lives. I also want to point out that we used it as a device in the book also to showcase how powerful music was when it came into our life. When Sara and I figured out that we could write music and started songwriting when we were 16 very seriously and started to perform for our friends and be taken seriously as a band, we stopped experimenting with drugs. We stopped using drugs. It replaced it. And I think for Sara and I, those were the two places where we really were able to shake off some of our insecurities and open up. Those were two places where we were able to really start to explore and use language for the first time about what was happening inside of us. We never sat down and talked about our sexuality, ever. Sara was having secret relationships with girls, so was I. We never discussed it. But then we would sing these songs
Right.
to each other. We were each other's first audience, and the songs are so gay sounding to me. Like, it's so clear what we're struggling with.
Right.
It's so clear that we're singing about girls. And we did this for each other first, then our friends, then family, then strangers started to get into it. And it became a way for us to open up and to feel okay. And so going back and writing about that, discovering all our early songs, releasing them out into the world, I think it's the final step in releasing all of that trauma and sometimes insecurity and fear and anxiety that we felt then that we still feel now, and sharing that with our audience, who I know really feel that too.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because you do very poignantly write about coming out and trying to navigate your queerness, and also internalized homophobia and how much you grappled with that. And I think a lot of people think you come out and then you're okay, and that's not true because we still have to get up every morning and live in a world that's not built for us. And so I wondered what your relationship is like now with internalized homophobia. Is it still something that you struggle with? Where are you at today?
I totally do. And I think, what I started to realize as we were writing the book, and even just in this process of talking about the book publicly, is that a lot of the feelings that I've had over the years are really closely linked to the internalized homophobia I had as a teenager. I thought I would say things like, I just don't feel very good about myself. Or, on my worst days, I would say things like, I hate myself. And I would say it to get laughs. And I would say it to, I guess, release some of that tension that I would sometimes feel when I was thinking about myself, and I would say it to disarm our audience sometimes, and sometimes I would hear it back from them. Well, you hate yourself, I hate myself too. And I don't think I ever was really reaching back to that root of when did I start feeling bad about myself? When did I start feeling like I didn't like my body? When did I start feeling like I was uncomfortable with the thoughts that I was having about girls? And I think once I started to sort of go back into that time frame of adolescence and a little bit before adolescence, I really knew as early as probably 10 or 11 that I was gay. And I think when I start to think about when I started to have that narrative of I don't like myself, I don't like what I feel, I don't like the way I think, I don't like the way I look, a lot of that is really deeply entwined with this idea that being gay was bad. I was ashamed of myself, and I was really afraid. I was really afraid of what my future was going to look like. And I don't think we talk about it enough socially and culturally, but I definitely don't think we talk enough about internalized homophobia within the queer community, because I think we've been told, act happy, be excited, like now you can get married, like get on the float and go down Fifth Avenue and shut up already. Like, and I think that this idea that we went from being really discriminated against or marginalized or at risk, the idea that now something has changed, we're not supposed to talk about the fact that we still grew up during this time and don't always feel very good about ourselves. And I really I look forward to continuing to talk about that publicly, because I would like for people to know that while we sit up here and say, like, I'm so proud to be gay, I do love being gay. I feel really excited about it. But I don't always feel just that. You know, sometimes I do feel bad. And I want our audience to know that, because I want them to know that I know that sometimes they don't feel good about themselves.
It's interesting, too, because we have come a long way just in terms of visibility. Like, you think about Lil Nas X having the biggest hit ever on Billboard, and he's gay. Haley Kiyoko, Taylor Swift's video for You Need to Calm Down. Like, we do see more queer people in the media, but I still feel like we have a ways to go before that actually means something. What do you guys think is the next step, especially in terms of the music community, for really moving from just some visibility to actually having a super huge pop star who's queer, has a long career, that kind of thing? How do we move there?
Well, I don't know if we'll have time to get there because of climate change.
Good point. Right.
So, not to bring it
TikTok.
even further down,
Seriously.
but if we're gonna do it, we should with a long career. I mean, that's a lot of pressure. No, but you just named a bunch of really amazing artists, and there's I think a thriving, vibrant, diverse community of LGBTQ identified artists that are doing well. And if we can applaud one great thing about the sort of destruction of the traditional, music industry archetype with streaming and the move to digital and all this stuff, it is to say that there are communities of music that are now doing better than ever before, because we are not beholden to the radio and traditional mainstream model of promoting music. And so it doesn't seem random to me or a coincidence that now there is so much diversity that's happening within the popular music world by the destruction of this other world. So I think that that's a good thing. And I think we just have to keep celebrating artists. We need to continue to celebrate our artists that don't fit that traditional cookie cutter, status quo kind of model. And I think Haley Kiyoko is an example of that, who has just flourished in this extreme way by being herself and connecting directly to her audience and circumventing the traditional model. I think King Princess is another example. I think Janelle Monáe is another example. But you have these young artists that are coming up like Shamir and Shora and Muna, and it's really, really freaking exciting to see. And artists like us are thriving because of that. Like, just the more of us there is, the more, excited people get about that kind of music. I think my one fear, though, I will say, is that as the industry and corporate mainstream culture sees how strong and vibrant and passionate the queer community is, and they start to try to erode that and take advantage of it and market to it, we are starting to be segregated. You start to see these mainstream brands creating their pride version, their gay version, the LGBTQ imprint for this major thing. I want to be in Billboard, not in Billboard Pride. I want to be in Rolling Stone, not whatever vertical they come up with for LGBTQ people. I don't want us to be cordoned off. The best thing that ever happened to us was that we decided to take a turn into pop music and put out Heartthrob and have Closer. And you know who started coming to our shows more than ever before? Queer people. But queer people who were from the mainstream, who'd never heard of us because we were in the underground. We like all kinds of music as we're just like everybody else. And so I just want to be careful that we aren't celebrating queer people into a closet again.
1 month of
like
the
we're
year.
like, you guys, we
Depends what
love
kind of
you,
closet.
you're so
like
great.
If it's a walk-in closet.
Yeah, but
it's sort of.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, we're cool with gay people now. We love gay people. Gay people, follow us. We're going to go into this special area. It's called Gay People's Area. And it's like, I'm just saying, like, be careful. Be careful.
I recently read an interview with comedian Hannah Gadsby, who I love, and she said this, and I thought it was interesting. So many comedians expect control of the room when they're on stage because they've got the magic stick that amplifies their voice and everyone has to listen. But that's not the world we live in anymore. As the world changes, so our content has to change. Comedy no longer exists in a vacuum. To be relevant, you have to speak with your audience. You don't get to just tell them how it is. And I feel like this applies as well to music, but I wanted to hear about your relationship with your audience and your fans, which I think is very special, at least how I'm looking at it from the outside. What is it like, and what is that back and forth like for you guys?
For us, because we started at a time where we couldn't rely on traditional radio, television, like traditional marketing, we had to create a relationship. And I don't mean that as like an empty word. Like, we met with our fans. We stood with them on the street. We stood with them in the clubs. We stood and sold them our T-shirts after we had just played our shows. We listened to them. We talked to them. I felt like I understood them and they understood me. And that relationship is not always positive. There's always like unhealthy dynamics to that. There's feedback that you don't like to get, whatever it is. But I have always found that for us, at least, what has allowed us to continue to thrive after 20 years is creating, sustaining, nurturing the relationship between us and the people who come to see our band. That doesn't always mean liking the feedback that they give us, doesn't always mean creating for them. It just means creating something. And if they like it, if they love it, if it connects with them, that's fantastic. I'm not saying we haven't made missteps, but it's always coming from this authentic place of like, this is real. What we're selling you, what we're giving you is real. It's real. And that relationship or that dynamic for me has been the reason to keep going. I'm not, like Tegan said, we're not really creating, we're not creating in a vacuum. Like we're not creating for a radio station or for a one type of person. We are creating something that we can get out and sing and speak about every day authentically. And I think that relationship that we've built with our audience, that allows us to do that safely and in an excited way.
One thing, maybe this is kind of controversial, but yeah, right? You guys are starting your tour, and for the first show, fans can't have their cell phones. And I've heard other artists be criticized for that, and people say, I paid the money for this, I want a picture, or how am I supposed to stand here for 2 hours without my phone? Do you think this is something you'd want to do more of, and how do you feel about phones in general at shows?
So annoying.
Yeah. Well, that's Sara, everybody. I
went to see Ariana Grande recently, and someone was filming the show on their iPad.
Right,
I was
I've seen that before.
Okay, the iPad's a bit much.
Right.
I brought my big screen TV. It's connected to Netflix now, so I'm just like, put it down.
I think that we have a complicated relationship to technology, and I kind of use that as an umbrella term that also includes the internet and social media. For us, we embraced all of that the second it appeared because it gave us an opportunity to remove the middleman who was often neutering or watering down our message and speak directly to our audience. And it's been what has created the relationship that Sara was just talking about. So in some ways, I've always loved social media, technology, taking photos, connecting with our fans. But at some point, we definitely hit a tipping point, and shows have started to feel like really impersonal experiences where Sara and I are parading for a bunch of cell phones. That is not why we're doing this on this tour, though, but like we do have a complicated relationship with that technology, creating a barrier between us and the people we care deeply. We leave our family, our friends, the comfort of home, and we travel 200 days a year to bring you a show, and I want to see your eyes. I want to see you watching. I don't want you to be standing behind your cell phone the whole time. I want to see your face.
Yeah.
So there is that relationship. We chose to do this for the first couple shows because the album isn't out yet. This is new for us. We haven't done something like this before where we're kind of bringing a really intimate, very stripped down performance to our fans. And, we'll be reading from the book, which is a very, intense book. And we're going to be telling stories. We're going to be showing footage. We're going to be singing in a different kind of way than we have and performing songs in a different kind of way. And we wanted to take the pressure off of the audience to capture every moment of that, but also for ourselves to be parading around in front of a sea of cell phones and just remember what we're all here for and just have this moment of connection. I don't know that we're going to do it for every show. I don't know that I think we should. I do love people documenting. I love going on social media after our shows and seeing everyone's photos and videos. I love seeing people react to our music. I think it's really sweet. It's a great way for us to be promoted. Also, you know, you share with your friends and that like allows us to thrive. But I think as we near the end of times, that I would like all of us, when we're together, to enjoy it and to be present in that moment. I mean this. I mean, I'm partly joking, but I'm really serious. I want you to remember the show with your brain.
Yeah.
You know, if I could trust everyone would take a photo or take a few minutes of like capture and then be done.
Yep.
But it's like, you're not, I know, I just went and saw Pink and I kept pulling out. I was like, is she flying around the arena? And I wasn't present.
Right.
I wasn't present. And then I was self-conscious because the people behind me knew I was filming and then the people with me. And I just want us, how much time's left? We should just be present for it.
Remove that from the equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're like right now we're only doing it for a couple of shows. We'll see how it goes.
I got through like 4% of my questions, but I think we should move on and let some other people ask some. So our first one is from Twitter. So our first question is, I think it's going to appear magically on the screen here.
Whoa.
How much tougher or not is it writing a book versus writing songs?
That's a good question.
I really was surprised by how similar the process was for us. When we're writing music, we work on our computers. We use a lot of different types of recording programs. And so my main instrument, if you will, when I songwrite has been a computer for 20 years. And so when I sat down to write the book, I was at the same computer. I was in the same position. I was using this guy, you know, and I was using these guys. And I don't know, it really felt similar to me. And actually, this might be a little bit boring, but like when we're writing music, you know, we can touch we can like use the cursor and we can grab chunks of audio and we can move them around and we can move things around. I did the same thing with the book. Sometimes I'd be writing a chapter and I'd be looking at 3,000 words and I'd say, I don't know, what if I took the end of the chapter and moved it up here? And so there was so much similarity between the technology that I found the experience quite similar. We're also very disciplined people. We're very 9 to 5 / Dolly Parton. And I just, I feel like I use the same sort of rigorous kind of like discipline of like, get up every day, sit at that computer, and work. And you know, after a year, we had a book, you know, and so I actually found the process really similar. I think probably the one area that made writing a book a little more challenging is Tegan and I are performers. I might work 10 hours in my studio completely alone, but then I like send the song to Tegan and I get that immediate gratification of her saying, awesome, or like, meh.
Nobody wants to let you read to
No
them.
one.
My
No
girlfriend
one.
would come home and I'd be like, can I read you my chapter that I wrote today? And she'd be like, yeah.
That
Great.
means no. They don't want to hear you read the chapter. They're like, can I read the chapter with my own eyes?
No, I need to read it to you and use voices. And she'd be like, okay.
Which is
Great.
very different than playing music, because I think when you say to someone, can you give me 2 minutes and 42 seconds of your time and tell me if you like the song, is very different than saying, may I read you 3,000 words and keep making errors and mistakes and stop when I get emotional reading my own words. It's like it's a cycle of narcissism that no one wants to be a part of.
Yeah, it's quite the undertaking.
It's disgusting.
Right,
So, yeah.
right. Okay, thanks.
Loved writing the book. Loved it.
Awesome. Thanks, Twitter, for that. Now we've got some in the audience. Let's see who's up first. Over here.
Hi, I'm Tatiana. I'm 24. I'm from here. First, I want to say I'm next to your youngest fan right here. She is so cute.
So sweet. keep your hand on that child because Sarah will take it.
I might, yeah. What's the loner?
You two are iconic. And I just want to say, like, thank you for being so, like, just really good people to look up to for the past, over 10 years I've been listening to y'all. My question is, how did it feel to like revisit those emotions and those experiences from high school? Because I know I'm 24 and when I read something from like 2010, it feels daunting to me. So I can't imagine how it is for y'all, you know?
Thank you for your question.
Yes, thank you very much. You know, I think one of the things I've noticed in the first couple months of talking publicly about the book and revisiting our old songs to make this new record is that pretty much everyone immediately is like, oh, I don't want to talk about. I would never want to go back to my high school years. And also there's like a shame about your early work. So creatives are quick to point out that they would never want anyone to hear their early music or see their early writings. And I think Sara and I have started to I mean, we are starting to say this publicly. I think we all need to be a little easier on ourselves. I think we're really, really hard on ourselves. And I know that this is partly because everything goes on the internet and then it's all about liking, not liking, and leaving comments. And we've all turned into real jerks who think their opinion matters more than like anything. But I'd like to see us move towards loving ourselves and being more kind to ourselves. I think this would start a trend of us then being more kind and compassionate to each other. And so, yes, I cringed, and yes, I was horrified by what I saw, read, and viewed of myself in that era. But the more I wrote and the more I watched it and the more I listened to it, the more that I liked me. And the more I thought, wow, I was so sincere and I was so ready to take on the world. And I really just wanted the best for my friends and for myself and for the world. And everything I created reeked of that. And I'm going to just put that on the world and encourage everybody else maybe to do the same and just be kinder to yourself. And, you know, but it's hard watching it. I mean, right now, the show, I watch the footage of me and I'm like, shut up, 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 shut up. And then I'm like, you're cute, you're cute, you're cute, you're cute. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else has one? Hi.
Watch your head. Oh, whew.
Thank you.
It's okay. I could have done CPR.
Yeah. Hi, I'm MJ. I'm actually queer silver too. Like, I don't want to hog anything.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't know like, that was gonna happen. Anyway.
Did you tweet right from there?
Yeah, and then somebody asked if somebody has like another question.
Wow.
But I do have another question.
Great.
But first, I want to say thank you for your advocacy and activism and your visibility, especially for somebody like me growing up in the Philippines and like not having any kind of role models. I like to see you guys being out there and like achieving. That was really inspirational. But my question is regarding the memoir. Has your mom read it, and what did she think of it?
Great question. Thank you.
Our mom has read the memoir, and she was very responsible with her feelings about it, some of which she shared with us, and other feelings she shared privately with, I assume, friends or maybe her own therapist. But the story is really hard for a mom to read, and I know that. And I think we both knew that going into it. It's one thing when we're making jokes on stage about our childhood or adolescence or the struggles that we had. I think it is an entirely different thing to be alone with those pages and to read that story and to know that the world is going to read that story. Our mom was a strong, confident, like just ambitious woman, and she wasn't always around. And I think her takeaway from the book was complicated, but I think her biggest thing was that she wished she could have been around more to protect us from the things we write about in the book. And, you know, part of the conversation that she and I are having, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but around my coming out and how difficult it was. And I do write in the book about how difficult it was. My mom didn't do the things that she wished she'd done, didn't say the things that she would say to me now. And I think both of us wish my coming out was different. And the truth is that very shortly after I came out, Tegan came out, and it was a very different experience.
Mine was great.
It was a lot better. And I think my mom feels really, she has a lot of feelings about that. And I think what is important for me and what I've said to her and what I say publicly to people all the time and what I say privately to other parents who talk about these things with me, you can't always get it right, but that doesn't mean that getting it wrong means you can't make up for it. My mom has more than made up for it. She has been an amazing ally, an amazing mother. She has been such a wonderful support. But it was important for me to share how I came out and how wrong, in a way, she got it, because so many people do get it wrong, and I think it's okay to forgive ourselves for that. It's okay to misgender someone. It's okay to not say the right thing when someone tells you something that they are hearing for the first time, and it's okay to let them have another try at it, another million tries at it if they need to. And for me, my mom, the one thing I really wanted her to understand is that I didn't just not tell my mom that I was gay. I didn't tell Tegan. I didn't tell my friends. I, in a lot of ways, didn't tell myself. I was having secret relationships with girls, and I couldn't say the word that I was gay until I was 18 years old. And I think it is such a shock to people that I didn't even tell Tegan, but like Tegan was on the other side of a continent from me emotionally. I could not tell anyone. And so I think it's important for us, you know, just what Tegan was saying, it's okay to be a little bit tender with yourself and your coming out story, even if you're on the other side, receiving side of a coming out story. I haven't always been generous or kind. or a good listener or whatever it is. And so, my mom, I'm like, forgive yourself for not being great in 1998 when I dropped this bombshell on you that I was gay.
She also wishes we hadn't taken so much acid.
Well, that's true. And for that, I'm just like, she told us a lot of scandalous stories about herself, which we did not reveal in the book. But I'm not blaming her, but she was a very adventurous young person. And what did she expect us to be like?
Yeah.
Nuns?
I think collectively, though, our family is very proud of us for writing the book, and I said this earlier, but I think they understand the purpose of it and understand that it's going to reach a lot of people and it's going to make a lot of people feel seen and realized, and I think that they'll get over it.
They will have to because it's coming out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just love that idea that you can get it wrong, but you can still make up for it. I think
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing for us to concentrate on.
I think that within our own communities too, there's all this infighting and we make missteps, and it's okay to make a misstep, actually. I think it's okay. And I think we should forgive ourselves for making those mistakes, own up to them, apologize, and do better. That's it. Just do better. I've done so many wrong things. I've said the wrong things. I have been a total jerk. Own it and be better. That's it.
I love that. I think we have one more question from the audience. Here we go.
Hi.
Hello. So I know in the past that you guys' like songwriting style has been very separate. Like, Sara would go off and write her own and Tegan would write her own. So I was wondering, why did you guys choose to make this record much more collaborative, and what was that like?
It's a great question. Nice to see all of you. When I found the songs, there was maybe 40 in total. And for me, it was in part really hard to even tell which songs were mine, which were Sara's. And I think because there was so much distance, so all these songs for the new record are over 20 years old. And I didn't necessarily feel that emotionally attached to mine or Sara's. It was just, I just felt this incredible excitement and love for the songs in general. It brought back so many good memories. And as we were picking through, we didn't focus as much as we usually do on, okay, well, let's pick 10 Tegan songs, 10 Sara songs. We just picked the best songs. We picked the songs that, all the people in our lives we let listen, and we had a spreadsheet. It was like a whole thing. Everybody voted. Yeah. And the songs that everybody loved the most, those were the ones we went into the studio to record. And some of the songs that I felt most passionate about were Sara's. There's a song on the record called I Don't Owe You, and another one called I Know I'm Not the Only One. And I could, the second I heard them on the tapes, I just remember feeling so jealous and envious and also just thrilled when Sara wrote them. It brought me back like a time machine to that time. And Sara was like, you sing it for the record. So I think it's uncovered a whole new place that Sara and I can go in the future. I'm really excited. I mean, I know we're promoting this book and the record, but I'm already thinking, what will our next record sound like? Because I think this has opened up a whole world where songs that Sara has written in the past that I loved, I would have never been like, well, I'll sing it then. I'll cut it for the record. Let me do it. And I think now we might be able to do a bit more of that. And I think there just was a desire to sing more together. That's what we did when we were teenagers. And I think we just really wanted to like carry the weight, kind of distribute it more evenly, I guess. So, I mean, yet to be seen if people will enjoy this, but I hope you do. I hope that it resonates with you. But I am a fan of Sara. So in a way, it's like my dream coming true that I get to stand on stage and sing her words and her songs. It's like I'm becoming Harry Styles, I don't know. I'm on
I
mushrooms.
wasn't with you until you said the Harry Styles thing, and then I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll
I
take
think
it.
you always talk about how you love him online. I don't know.
him.
That was like a Twitter joke, I guess.
Harry
It
Styles
was like
confuses me
deep web
because
jokes.
it's like I love him, but I like want
Want
to
to be him. I know.
Right.
I know.
All those
confusing.
feelings
a
inside.
lot of
confusing
feelings.
feelings.
Well, it's exciting that you're already thinking about the next album, but I want to congratulate you both on the new book, this album, the tour. Thank all of you guys for coming, everyone watching at home, and congratulations.
Thank you.